Welcome to Building Resilience, Fire-Resistant Exteriors, where we'll be hearing about how we can design and build buildings to reduce the risks of loss during a wildfire event. You will be hearing from a panel of representatives who will educate us on fire-resistant materials and building practices. They will each provide a brief overview of their business or product and explain how it can keep buildings safe from external fire. My name is Greg Ingalls. I am a licensed architect at Rowland & Broughton Architecture and Design. I am also a Colorado Green Building Guild board member and co-hosting our presentation tonight with Marisol Foreman. Say hello, Marisol.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Greg. My name is Marisol Foreman. I'm a fellow architect at Rowland & Broughton and also a Colorado Green Building Guild board member.
With that, we're moving on to our sponsors that help make this work happen. Our sustaining sponsors include Louisville's own Alpine High Performance Products, who have been a national leader in window technology, as well as 475 High Performance Building Supply, a great source for green building materials, as well as free educational resources for architects and designers. Our supporting sponsors are Hammerwell, Caddis Collaborative, Living Craft, Boulder County, and Cottonwood Custom Builders. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Marisol Foreman. She will help us run through some of the basics of fire-resistant exteriors. Take it away, Marisol.
Thank you, Greg. So what does fire-resistant mean? A fire resistance is the property of materials that prevents or delays the passage of excessive heat and fire. While no building materials are completely fireproof, it does take longer for fire to burn fire-resistant materials. On the next slide, we'll review some of these common terms. A non-combustible material is a material that, under the conditions anticipated, will not ignite or burn when subjected to fire or heat. This provides the best performance for both flame spread and penetration. A fire-resistant material is a material that is designed to resist burning and withstand heat. Under conditions of a standard heat intensity, it will not fail structurally or allow transit of heat, and it will not permit the side away from the fire to become hotter than a specified temperature. An ignition-resistant material, on the other hand, provides information regarding flame spread. Materials with this classification can be expected to perform better than a combustible material, but not as well as non-combustible. And lastly, combustible materials are those that are able to catch fire and burn easily. Materials with this classification will not perform well when exposed to intense heat or flames. So what is a fire resistance rating? Ratings can be given to either a single building material or a complete assembly, such as all of the components in a roof or a wall assembly. The flame spread rating and heat release rate of materials have been used to characterize combustible materials. This information can be available for materials commonly used on the outside of buildings, such as those we'll hear about during this webinar, and is being used to compare performance of combustible construction materials. A heat release rating can be determined by measuring the mass loss of a burning material or by measuring the total and/or rate of energy released while a material is burning. The heat release rates have been published for common construction materials. Another method used for comparing the combustibility of materials is to evaluate the flame spread rating of a material. This is determined by subjecting material placed in a horizontal tunnel to a gas flame, similar to the Steiner tunnel shown here. A combustible material will be rated as Class A, Class B, or Class C based on its performance in this test. A material rated as Class A would have a lower flame spread and therefore a better performance rating than a Class C material. To dive in a little deeper, Class A fire rating is the best fire rating a material can achieve. These materials do not burn well and are very unlikely to contribute fuel to a fire. These are building materials such as brick and fiber cement. Class B fire rating is the next best rating. Building materials in this class are typically your slower burning whole wood materials. Class C is classified as your faster burning whole wood, such as plywood, fiberboard, and hardwood siding panels. Class D and E are considered to have little to no effectiveness against any form of fire exposure. A few things to consider to improve the fire safety of your home is to consider constructing fireproof walls in specific areas, such as a nursery, a designated safe room, or an exit route from bedrooms. Choose treated lumber that can bring the wood studs and drywall into the Class A fire rating category. And lastly, perform routine property and building maintenance to reduce fire spread. I'll pass it back over to Greg to provide us with more information on fire spreading.
All right, in this portion, I will discuss fire spreading and how we can design our houses and communities to prevent it. First off, community density. When homes and other buildings are built closely together, they can transfer fire through thermal radiation. Although building codes do govern the materials and assemblies used for fire-rated construction separation to safeguard against the spread of fire and smoke, we should advocate for more space between buildings when possible, especially in zones susceptible to wildfire. Secondly, we would like to briefly discuss defensible space. Defensible space is a buffer you maintain between your building and the natural environment. This space is needed to slow or stop the spread of wildfire and helps protect your home from catching fire, either from embers, direct flame, or excessive radiant heat. Homeowners should clear all dead vegetation within this space and advocate for a community effort in this regard. Lesser known, but likely most important, is the non-combustible zone. This is a 5-foot barrier directly around your home, including your deck. Only allowing vegetation that is non-woody and well irrigated, removing mulch and replacing it with gravel or other non-combustible material. And now that we have covered maintenance of what surrounds your home, let's get into the building itself. Before we transition here, a reminder. You can ask your questions during the discussion in the chat feature. We have a full presentation planned, but we'll be opening the conversation to Q&A at the end. I will be reading these questions out loud, and we will get to as many as possible. Now back to Marisol to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Greg. We have a great lineup of panelists today. We will be starting with James Hardy, with Sam and Chris. Thomas will be speaking about Rockwool. Lisa Moray with Colorado Earth. SLOMAX Masonry with Sam. Bill Hendricks will be reviewing CHEMCO. Mike Giuliani will be providing information from Montana Timber Products. And Nate Oliver will be speaking to Vulcan events. Without further ado, we'd like to introduce our first presenters, Sam Cowick and Chris Coghill with James Hardy Home Siding. Sam is the regional account manager and Chris is the technical manager. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Sam and Chris.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this. Obviously, it's a very important topic. Covering the Western Slope, I've seen firsthand the devastation this can have on communities, and I'm actually a Denver native myself, so I've been here 36 years, and I've seen the risks of this go up and up, as we all have. So Chris and I both have been working on supporting our dealers, our distributors, our builders, our contractors, and our homeowners, most importantly, the homeowners, on just what to do and the best way to build in order to hopefully prevent this from happening to you in your home. Obviously, certain things are out of our hands, but what we can do as homeowners ourselves is prepare as best we can. So it's with that Hardy is very much so a product that is dealing with this. What we did mention earlier, and I will breeze over some of these things because they're already mentioned, is the defensible space, etc. What we are dealing with is wildfire urban interface areas, which you might have heard of. They refer to zones in which your house are in or near wilderness areas. Those areas are growing because land is more densely populated these days with all the folks moving to our area in particular. So you know, there are over 4.8 million homes in high risk areas in the United States. And just in Colorado, you'll see these areas in Colorado here. So the darker points are where there's more population in these zones. And as you can see, most of them are on the Front Range here in areas like Boulder, Louisville, all the way down to Jefferson County, etc. So you'll see the metrics on the right-hand side there that'll show you that a lot of homes in Colorado are in these wildfire urban interface areas. That's where it's going to be absolutely vital to do the things that Greg and Marisol mentioned earlier, which is defensible space, non-combustible building materials, etc. Hardy being one of those. What is unknown to most folks is windblown embers are actually the highest risk to your home. They can fly over a mile ahead of wildfires. Everybody thinks of that direct contact, which is probably the scariest scenario. Direct contact to your home. It's actually the windblown embers that'll get in your gutters, your roofs, your front yards. And if that area isn't clear of fuel for a fire, or it's built out of fuel for a fire, you're going to be vulnerable to things going haywire for you. So that is highly important, is preparing your home for windblown embers. Now, where Hardy comes in, which was already mentioned, is material classification. So this is a little redundant, my apologies, but Hardy is a Class A fire rated, which you'll see down towards the bottom there. And additionally, James Hardy fiber cement siding has a flame spread of 0, is categorized as a Class A material. So as you go down the list, it'll get nothing better than a Class A 0 flame spread fire rating there. As for how Hardy is made that way, and everything we do is low maintenance, durability with design in mind. So Hardy only uses the highest quality ingredients, premium fiber cement, finely ground sand, and natural fibers. We actually are the only siding manufacturer in the world that is engineered specifically for climate. So what you get in this area of Colorado and mostly the northern 2/3 of the country is made for those elements you see on the bottom. We're talking a lot about fire today, but also pests, freezing and thawing, expansion, contraction, high wind areas. All of those things go into the design of Hardy and specific to climates. So again, low maintenance, durability is in everything that we do. We also try to be the greenest company we can be. Hardy siding products are made from natural and sustainable raw materials. 100% of the fiber used in our products is recycled post-consumer waste. Durable fiber cement materials, not only require fewer resources for replacement, but help reduce maintenance and repair costs. Additionally, we have plants all over North America. We have very small footprint to get those raw materials to the manufacturer and to process those materials. And here's where I want to kind of repeat myself, is the fire resistance, non-combustible, moisture resistant, so resist swelling, warping, and cracking. Those are more of aesthetic issues you may have down the road that aren't maybe as vital as fire resistance, but nonetheless, you want your house looking good and low maintenance for as long as you can. More stable, dimensional stability, so it often looks like wood, but performs much better in a fiber cement product. And again, aesthetically pleasing. So we're going to get into a little bit of the design of what Hardy brings as well. This is what I had mentioned. So we have 11 plants strategically located. We've actually expanded at nearly all of these plants. We actually, Prattville, Alabama just came online last year. So over the last 2 years, we've expanded by nearly 1 billion square feet of capacity. That's per year. So yeah, it's pretty impressive what we've been able to accomplish in a very difficult time as far as production and demand. The LEED certification. So this will talk about our Hardy siding products and our artisan line as well. And just the proof behind the ICC codes and standards is what Hardy's speaking to here in our classification of green guidelines. Warranty. I know people don't often like to talk about warranty, but Hardy's is a non-prorated warranty, meaning at year 1, you are covered at year 30. So peace of mind, right? So if something does go wrong with your home as a part of a manufacturer defect from Hardy, it will stand by our product at year 30, like at year 1. So it'll cover yourself for basically the life of your home. And we have several different products. Hardy Plank is our most popular by far. The Cedar Mill is that wood look, but we also do have Smooth, which is gaining a lot of popularity. Hardy Panel, Cedar Mill Smooth, and Sierra 8 in several sizes. And then we have Trim in 4/4 and 5/4, which in layman's terms, 5/4 thicker, 4/4 slightly thinner. And we also have those in rustic grain, which is, again, a wood texture, as well as smooth. And then Hardy Shingle, which is probably our sharpest and best looking product because it does look like a true cedar shake because of those true keyways between shingles. We have them in straight edge as well as staggered edged. Soffit, again, smooth, and the Cedar Mill, which is that wood texture as well, in vented and non-vented. And this is probably a product for the Front Range and the Western Slope. It's called Aspire. It's going to look a lot like your milled cedar looks that you see in a lot of mountain towns. So you'll be able to achieve those looks in the soffit with mitered corners instead of trim at the corners, some really sharp looks for you guys to have to choose from when building and designing your home. Again, the same building innovation in the product as well. So all of these products are going to have that fire resistance, pest resistance, all the things synonymous with Hardy are in every one of our products. And then this is a new product. So we just showed you kind of our wood look and our smooth products. This one is going to really address the design of a lot of homes you'll see in Denver, Florida, California, the Pacific Northwest, where there's a lot of different claddings on the same home. It's going to have a locking joint. So this is kind of a modern looking stucco panel, whereas you're not going to have to wait for the weather variations that you need to install or put up stucco. You can put up a Hardy panel and have that fire resistance that stucco brings and the look that stucco brings with somewhat of a possibility of a faster install. And then lastly, this just shows there's going to be fine sand, which is a stucco looking panel. Seagrass, which is definitely a different element, and you can't see it all that great on this slide. And then also a sculpted clay, so it'll almost look like a stone looking panel that you can apply to Hardy with the same low maintenance, fire resistant, weather defending product. And lastly, and we only had a short time, so I'm talking without Chris today, but he is also a tech rep that only does install related questions for our builders and our contractors. On top of that, we have all these resources online where you can get any and all install related documents. One, if you're just looking over your home's build with a contractor or a builder, you can look along and have all the documents that they have by going to jameshardypros.com. Or if you're doing a do-it-yourself job, all the resources are available for you to do it right and to have that low maintenance and durability that everyone wants and the peace of mind that comes along with that. So with that, I'm sure I'll get some questions at the end, but thanks again for having us. This is vitally important as we all know here. So just really appreciate being a part of it and look forward to any questions at the end.
Thank you, Sam. I hope you all can hear me a little better now. And maybe when we get to the Q&A section, Chris will probably be a valuable resource as we move on. Next up, we have Thomas Tommen from Rockwool. Sorry, he's the Building Insulation Territory Manager at Rockwool. Take it away, Thomas.
Hey, everybody. I'm from Rockwool over here. Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to be. There we go. I kept mine short and sweet and to the point. Just to cover Rockwool in the Colorado Boulder area. Just some of the big feature highlights. We're going to start obviously with the fire resistance. That's what we're all here for to talk about today. Big thing with Rockwool, it's made out of rocks. We're literally made out of basalt and iron slag. Think about how hard it is to catch a rock on fire, and that's essentially how hard it is to catch rock wool on fire. So we have, again, we covered these terms. We're probably going to be hearing a lot of these a lot today. The big one with us is we have a flame spread index and smoke spread index of 0. We're non-flammable, non-combustible. Again, like I said just a second ago, think of how hard it is to catch a rock on fire. Our melting point, when we actually turn back into lava, is well over 2000 degrees. And I like this graph here because it kind of puts in perspective of where melting points are. I point out steel every time. Steel melts at about half of our temperature, so you're losing all load-bearing capacity before our product's even warming up. Just to touch on some other benefits of Rockwool quickly, water repellency. It's inorganic, so it won't support mold or mildew growth. Termites hate us, mites hate us. We're sound absorbent. We're a very dense material, again, made out of rocks. Makes it hard for air to transfer through, also makes it hard for the sound waves to get through. And lastly, vapor permeability. That's one that's not talked about a lot in the Colorado market because it is very dry here. But one thing to important is think about is if your wall assembly gets wet, you want to make sure it can dry properly, which Rockwool allows the envelope to breathe properly and dry properly. And then just a nice little graph here. Looks like it's not all loading. I don't know if they, there we go. They loaded in transition. Really, this is just covering melting points again. We're at 2150, so very, very, very hot. Again, almost twice as much as the temperature of steel. One thing I do like to point out on this graph is the two very, very common building materials when you see for continuous insulation, the EPS and FPS. They actually start to melt at 212 degrees. So to put that in perspective, if you got a roaring boil, you're making some good pasta, your wall's melting at pasta temperature. Other things to consider, again, like we've said multiple times and James Hardy just covered, smoke development, flame spread, combustibility, again, and fire rated assemblies. We do have multiple assemblies with not only our residential and commercial products, but we've really started pushing our continuous insulation, the Comfort Board 80 for the residential. It sparked it with the California wildfires, but we've moved more into fire rated walls, and we've gotten 1 hour and 2 hour fire rated wall assemblies approved with our Comfort Board 80. This is just a good picture I like to always put in every slideshow. It shows how we kind of fit a whole house concept on the insulation side. The Comfort Board 80 is our big one right now with continuous insulation. That's what you're going to see when you get especially with housing being built closer and closer together, like James Hardy was just discussing. The more population density we get, it seems like the more we can see into our neighbors' kitchens. So the Comfort Board 80 and continuous insulation in general helps kind of stop the fire spread before it gets into your house. And our Comfort Board 80 covers above grade, below grade for continuous. We have Safe and Sound, which are interior bats to help with soundproofing, as well as fire prevention in between floors and rooms. Our Comfort Board 80, again, exterior wall insulation batted. And we also have our Rockwool Safe, which is good for party walls. That's where you can get those 2 hour firewall assemblies. And then the next one I have, just again, I don't know how many people are interested in the commercial side of it. We have commercial applications as well with our curtain wall. We have rain screen application. We have our Comfort Board 110, which is just a higher density board, more in the commercial application, as well as our AFB, which is our acoustic fire bat. I've seen it more and more used. We actually offer it in wood stud now, so I see it more in the residential more often than not. But it's a great sound absorption and fire bat. And then the last slide, I think it's the last slide, is just a wall assembly. A lot of people talk about, well, what does a good fire rated wall assembly begin with or look like? And this is kind of our solution to it. It has the full Rockwool wall assembly from continuous to interior and exterior walls. And this is a great residential example because it can cover up to a 4-story building, which you don't see very many of those even in Colorado. And again, I kept it short and sweet, so hopefully there's a good conversation and questions at the end here.
Great information. Thank you, Thomas. Right, up next, I would like to introduce our next presenter. We have Lisa Morey. She's the founder and owner of Colorado Earth. Take it away, Lisa.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here. So Colorado Earth, we are kind of involved in 3 aspects of design and construction, as well as the manufacturing of our own product here in Golden, Colorado. So the slide on the right shows our facility right off Highway 93. We are using the quarry finds at that location. So we also design, engineering, architecture, get you through building permit, and support construction as well. So this is what we produce. It's, we call it an eco block, but it's a stabilized compressed earth block. It's stabilized with lime and no Portland, and it's unfired. It doesn't have to be fired. It has the strength needed as it is. So the equipment there you see on the left is a compressed earth block machine and a series of equipment behind it that make these 6 by 12 inch structural masonry units. So it's not requiring any other framing member for it. You might be scratching your head thinking like, what is this? And is this an Adobe? And it is akin to the Adobe brick that's been around for over 10,000 years. It's the same raw material with the addition of lime here for added strength. And it's been in constant use for 10,000 years. And so, and some of the oldest buildings there are still standing, for thousands of years in constant use. So all over the globe, and still today, where it's estimated that 40 or 50% of the world's population lives in a building out of earth and masonry. Benefits, apart from being fireproof, is what the topic here today is, but there are others, including, what we really need, what we're focusing on here as a building industry is reducing our carbon footprint and what it takes to produce a material. It is low maintenance. It does reduce energy use. It has great acoustics. It's healthy. It has a pH in which mold can't grow. And of course, it is fireproof. So I'm kind of working alongside with UC Davis, and they produced this slide. They are looking at earth blocks as a material to mitigate against fire and climate change. So the slide is showing kind of the increased risk of fires and how much we're seeing acres burned. And if you want to see a fire test on these blocks, it's they built a wall in a laboratory, had fire against it furnace against for over 2 hours. The blocks remained cool to the touch on the other side of the wall throughout the test, and then post-test, I actually have one of the blocks from this test. The face of it turned to a fired brick, so kind of a pinker color, and it's actually less than 3 inches. It's really, my sample is about 3/4 of an inch. So we are, in the building code. We haven't been taken out, although there has been some attempts to because people didn't think it's still being used, but we're in the IBC of chapter 21, and all our plans are analyzed and stamped by a professional engineer who treats it really as a reinforced masonry wall system. New Mexico is kind of our US state leader with a number of buildings being built there. This is actually Rockwool was an insulation panel that we put on the outside of this earth block house in Castle Rock. I am actually now doing a double wall, so insulation between. I'll show you that later. But this is a home again that we did in Castle Rock, and it was plastered over the Rockwool as a finish. We are a thermal mass wall system, but here in Colorado we do need a thermal insulation layer as well. So these clients have been great. They say, hey, having an earth block house is a huge peace of mind. The owner, Troy, is a Denver firefighter, and he sought out this material for his family and gives the quote that, hey, dirt doesn't burn. So I am working with some folks in Sagamore to help build back with this wall system. Really excited about this opportunity, and folks are kind of recognizing that there are other wall systems out there. And I would like to say that there doesn't have to be one or the other. We can kind of have a hybrid approach as well. So next slide shows kind of what we're working towards. I'm partnered with a builder out in Colorado and putting together up to about 10 homes here that we're looking to do this, from now until next year. So we're in the design process now with some folks. The next slide shows kind of where we are and what we're hoping to kind of bring back to the community. So this is masonry is not typically used in the US, and a lot of people that are interested this is how they built back home where they're from, and it resonates with them as a more solid wall system. So it also kind of gives the acoustics of wind and kind of some of the triggering events that people have experienced and are still experiencing. So I mentioned the double wall system. This is kind of it underway. And so a lot of people ask how we do electrical and plumbing. And so you'll see it's created as part of the wall itself. The two, what's called whites of the blocks, are tied together with that metal ladder. So that structurally all tied together. There is vertical reinforcing where the engineer needs it. And next slide shows some more pictures in construction. The insulative cavity is about 3 inches, and we're putting a loose fill. Here is perlite. We can also do cellulose, but it is something that's poured in and kind of takes in all the areas of that cavity. Lintels are the structure above the windows and door opening, and so you see a steel structure going, or steel beam going across there. That can actually be timber or concrete as well. And so so final builds. This is a great house that was built in Austin, Texas. It's won some awards. It's a North Block house. Some of the other slides show some interior finishes. The 2 right ones are the house in Castle Rock. So there is a variety of different ways we can finish the walls with regards to plaster, leaving it raw, having a sealer on it, having a lime wash. Cadillac is a high-end lime plaster finish. So there's a range there depending on really client needs. So I just want to end, I touched on it a little earlier, plug in for my friends who wrote the book, Build Beyond Zero. This is all related to climate, to fire, as our climate is changing, and we need to learn how to both mitigate and adapt. So there has been a lot of upfront focus on reducing operational costs, what it takes to heat and cool a building. The next slide shows, though, that however, it is estimated, our friends at Architecture 2030 said that 3/4 of the building impact over the next two decades are actually from the materials chosen. So this is kind of a lot to take to realize, and maybe even believed for some people, but we are actually seeing a real focus in the architecture and building industry of focusing more about the building materials we're using. And there's a whole shift now on that. So, and it is about reducing the embodied energy of materials and getting EPDs around that. Nature-based solutions, using thermal mass, the performance of clay and how that operates to keep humidity levels where they need to be. And I just wanted to close with for future reading for those that remember the story as a kid and some of the benefits around masonry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a great presentation. Up next is Sam Ordway. He is the owner of SLOMAX Masonry. Welcome, Sam. Go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. Great information thus far. What you're looking at on the screen there is autoclaved aerated concrete blocks. That is actually concrete, but it's 70 to 80% air bubbles. So they're lighter than what they appear. Those blocks, each of the cylinders in there represent our structural components for when we build. Autoclaved aerated concrete's been around for over 100 years. It was developed in Germany originally and then perfected in Sweden. They improved it by curing the material in an autoclave with the heat and pressure. And what that turned the material into is tobermorite, which is a type of silica rock. This is a structural material that can handle a substantial amount of weights. When these blocks 8-inch thick, as you see the way these blocks are laid here, you enjoy most of our energy studies come out to be R22 to R24 with just laying this block down. You're not required when you add any type of plaster on the interior or the exterior, which is typically in the fire zones where we're working, which people choose. You can add colors to it. It's paintable plaster. We did decide to use mainly lime plasters because they're better for the environment. Autoclaved aerated concrete is an inert inorganic material that a lot of homes, there's a lot of toxins in there with adhesives and I don't want to throw any industries under the bus, but there's a lot of toxins in our homes these days. And when we stack these up, there are no toxins that'll be emitted into the living space. You see, we utilize some of the old masonry techniques. You can see the buck on the right hand side. We actually, and on the left side, you can see the U blocks on the top portion of those courses, and we put 2 rebar inside of those and fill it with high compression grout. And that is how we reinforce our windows and doors. We all remember the big earthquake that happened in Kobe, Japan. The only homes that survived that 7.2 on the Richter scale were AAC structures. They also survived the fires that were caused when the gas lines ruptured. AAC enjoys a 4-hour fire rating, and that is at over 2,000 degrees, which is pretty impressive. I've been working since last November in the Paradise Fire Zone, have attended many meetings with CAL FIRE, the town of Paradise. They lost 14,000 homes here. These homes were built, some of them out of block, some of them were sided with all kinds of materials. Every home was destroyed here, even if it was a steel structure. These fires move hotter and faster than we have ever seen before. We need to have about 16 to 1800 degrees to melt steel, porcelain, and glass, and we have seen that in our fires. Some of that evidence was in the recent, well, not recent, but a couple of years ago in Colorado. This is a barn we did in Mosier, Oregon, and the picture on the left shows how we reinforced the bond beam at the top. All the blocks below our U blocks are solid blocks like you saw in the original images. Adjacent to all windows and doors, we have a structural rebar that goes up. There's also a U block at the sill and the header, which racks any rough openings. We are also hybridizing our structures. We would prefer to use steel studs or steel trusses, but we can also hybridize. If we put a metal roof on it, we can use wood trusses. But what burned down most of the homes in Paradise, California, were having to vent these wood truss roofs. And they have some remedies for that. But they're not as effective as they could be if we were able to non-vent the roof. And we have gotten creative on some of the homes that we've built with circulating air through those, through either the HVAC system. And like I said, we've gotten creative with some of the insulative, the way we insulate the roof. AAC materials are a superior thermal insulation. We do get, it is a nickname, not to steal your Adobe, Lisa, but high-tech Adobe. It's lighter weight than traditional masonry cement products. It's easy to install. This building right here that we built 2 masons and 2 tenders. We erected this structure before they finished with the roof and the siding and the trusses. We had it up and ready for the trusses in about 7 days. So that's a 4-man crew and it's ready to go. We don't need any vapor barriers on those walls. Like I had mentioned, you can go right up against it with stone. This is a home that we finished in Paradise, California. These are wood posts, but we plastered them. We have 1 inch of plaster on them, and we put a roller that looks like wood grain on it. And we got pretty creative with this. The soffits that you can see, we also plastered those soffits, and then we used a hardy type material for our fascias. And then we put a metal roof on it, and we paid them a little bit of extra to bend some steel where we felt vulnerable that where embers may land and could potentially catch this home on fire. But this was a fun house to build, and we attracted the attention of FEMA on this particular job. And our materials are in the material science. AAC is in the material science division for FEMA, and we expect to be one of the preferred rebuilding materials. The insurance companies are taking close notice. Their underwriters can't justify rebuilding homes. A lot of these areas still have trees and will have fire risk in the next 10 to 15 years. So we are seeing that FEMA is not allowing any grants to anybody unless they rebuild with non-combustible materials, which everybody should take note of that. In Eagle, Grand County, and some of the other counties around Colorado, homeowners are having issues if they are building with more than 5 miles from a fire station, and that includes builder's risk insurance. There's one example in Eagle County with a contractor we are working with that they're paying over $10,000 for their builder's risk, and typically that policy is about $3,000 to $3,500. So we see a lot of the things that are happening in California already, which are mandatory rebuilds with non-combustible materials. And also the fact that insurance companies, if they want to renew your homeowners, they may mandate you to clad something on the exterior of your home. A certain percentage of it happens to be 60% in some areas in California, where you're just simply not going to be able to get your insurance if your home's a tinderbox, and that's pretty scary stuff. The other things that are beneficial about AAC is it is inert and it's inorganic. So termites, mold, mildew, they're not interested in it. It doesn't deteriorate with the elements. It's 100% recyclable. We all know that 30% of the materials that are delivered on a traditional build go to the dump. I've seen it for the last 30 years myself, and it drives me a little crazy, to be quite frank with you. And that's very wasteful. A lot of those are organic materials or chemical ridden materials, and those don't function real well for our groundwater. And then they also off-gas methane eventually as they're decomposing with the wood materials. We typically, after we do the perimeter walls, we do frame the interior walls with 2x4s or 2x6s. We use double pane low E windows that are designed to withstand more heat. And it's just an interesting to be a part of the changing face of how we're building these structures. And there's not going to be some choice in the wildland urban interface areas. There won't be some choices on the new builds. We're going to be mandated before long to build with materials that will be able to hold up to what Mother Nature's been throwing at us, which is pretty catastrophic. One thing about AAC is a lot of people aren't familiar with it in the United States, but there are 3,000 plants around this country or around the planet that make it. 60% of the structures in Australia use it. 50% of the structures in China, it is in those builds. 50% in England, 65% in Germany. And in Poland, 80% of the structures utilize AAC. And in the United States, it's like 0.01. So we are starting to see a lot of investors want to build more plants so that we can bring the price of this material down. But all of the homes that we build, we go through an exercise with the owners and we compare what the cost is if they were to do a traditional 2x6 or 2x4 16-inch on center wall, and what the cost is. And AAC is equal to our traditional building methods. So it's not going to cost you more to build with it. You'll fare better on your insurance rates, and you'll actually be able to get insurance. You'll have a more comfortable environment to live in, and you can also enjoy some savings on your energy costs. In the late 1800s, a lot of big cities were burning down in the East, and it was mandatory to use brick and block. The Masons came in and saved the day, and we're hoping to do the same right now with the changes in the climate and in the building industry. And I can answer any and all questions if you have some when we get to the Q&A, and subsequently if you so choose. Thanks a lot for having me, and I appreciate everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam, for all the information. We'd like to now introduce our next presenter, Bill Hendricks with CHEMCO. Bill is the owner at Safer Building Solutions. Take it away, Bill.
Oh, well, again, thank you for inviting us to participate in this. I've been with CHEMCO almost 30 years. CHEMCO got its start almost 35 years ago, answering the treated wood industry's answer for shake roofs in California. And we started out with a Class A, so we have the same fire rating for roofing as concrete tile does. I have a short video that I'd like them to start, and then I'll kind of go over the video afterwards, and I look forward to your questions at the end. So if you want to go ahead and start the video, please.
CHEMCO, located in Ferndale, Washington, has been on the forefront of treating wood products since 1981. CHEMCO was the first wood treaters to pressure treat cedar shakes and shingles for the California market. CHEMCO now treats only lumber and plywood for the interior and exterior markets. We have moved the shake and shingle treatment to our sister plant in Maple Ridge, BC. Canada produces most of the wood roofing products, so we opened the plant to be closer to the source. That plant runs under the name Fire Smart Roofing, FSR. This is where CHEMCO manufactures its own fire retardant called SLOMAX FR. Our chemical is environmentally friendly and starts out water soluble. SLOMAX FR is the only fire retardant chemical that has passed the natural weathering test required by California for the wood roofing market. CHEMCO and FSR treated wood are the only fire retardant treated wood products to offer a limited lifetime warranty on the fire retardant treatment. CHEMCO is the only treater to use the same fire retardant for interior and exterior treatment. That is why our interior products can see some weathering. CHEMCO's treating tube can handle up to a 40-foot length of lumber. This makes treating beams and glue lambs very accessible. The wood is kiln dried down to a certain percentage, or if possible, the moisture is removed by vacuum. Once the computer shows the proper amount of chemical has been injected into the wood, it's off to the kilns again for curing. After the product is removed from the treatment tube, it must be thermally cured. This process is what allows the SLOMAX FR to be the best and permanent treatment on the market. CHEMCO's proprietary way of treating allows a mar-free, no sticker marks on the finished side of the decking or siding. CHEMCO is the only fire retardant wood treater to offer this. Our lumber and plywood are tested to the ASTM standard for exterior and interior spread of flame requirements. For exterior wood, the samples are exposed to D2895 accelerated weathering. Our exterior wood products meet the International Building Code (IBC) requirements for ignition-resistant rating. All of our products are third-party inspected quarterly for quality control to maintain our ICC International Code Council listing.
Okay. Am I back on live?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'd just like to mention a slight typo. We caught it too late. We couldn't get it fixed. It's D2898 accelerated weathering. And that simulates up to like 30 years of weathering. And again, I'd like to point out our chemically treated wood is non-toxic. If it does go to landfill, it can go into a regular landfill. It does not require any special handling. And we can take any type of wood product, siding, decking, and make it a Class A rated product for the WUI. We also meet all the requirements for the International Wildland Urban Interface Code as well. That's about it. We are not, I'll let other people who do the manufacturing of the wood products speak about being able to use wood, but at least this way you can use a product that is fire safe and meets all the building codes. So again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to any of your questions about fire retardant treated wood.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Bill. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Mike Giuliani. He is the Business Development Manager with Montana Timber Products. And in his role with Montana Timber Products, Mike is responsible for overseeing sales and marketing. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Marisol. Glad to be part of this event. Montana Timber Products is a milling fabrication shop as well as a pre-finishing facility. We are able to manufacture fire-resistant wood materials that are also milled and stained per design guidelines. MTP has been partnered with CHEMCO since 2020 to offer fire line treatment for our wood products, which removes moisture and air from the wood cells and replaces with safe, environmentally friendly additives. The enhanced product is then thermally cured to lock in the additives to wood cells. The result is a fire protection that lasts for the useful life of the wood. It's Class A rated and solves for WUI compliancy. Fireline treated materials never need to be retreated for fire resistance, but they will need to be restained just like any other stained product, stained wood product. Fireline can be applied to siding, soffit, fascia, trim, timbers, posts, beams, and decking, and two substrates we offer, Douglas fir and cedar. Our best success using fireline treatment is with highly textured surfaces such as circle sawn or wire brushed. There will be some variation in the colors caused when we use fireline treatment. The tint coloration is in its interaction with treated lumber is not entirely predictable and cannot completely control the outcome of the when it's treated. So we highly recommend control samples when going through the process to use fireline. In the next three slides, I'm going to show three projects that we've been successfully used fireline with. First is in Truckee, California. This is our Aquifer product line and a custom color, smooth texture for the soffit. Was what used. The substrate was a clear vertical grain cedar in a 1x4 tongue and groove. In this particular application, I believe the WUI code was such that a 2-inch material was needed in a soffit application with a gyp board backing, but in order to solve for that without having to use a 2x material, we used a 1x fireline treated wood product. It looks really sharp. Architect was Clever Homes. The next slide. This is Cloudville. This is a Marriott Hotel in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's our ranch wood artisan line in dust color and charwood line in custom color. This material is actually went through several rounds of samples and mock-up to hit the design intent for both the vertical and horizontal application of siding for the building. It's a 1x6 shiplap and tongue and groove siding. The charring actually occurred in our facility prior to going to CHEMCO for the fire line treatment in this circumstance. This is the Highlands Resort in Beaver Creek, Colorado. It's our aquifer product line in a brown color with rake texture. This was a renovation, the reconditioning of the hotel, and so all wood products received the fire line treatment, and that includes siding, soffit, fascia, decking, beam wrap, which you can see on the right here, and all used fire line treatment. So we have many other projects and residential and commercial applications that we've been successfully specified with fire line, ranging from California, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, and Colorado. We're glad to be part of this event and appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you so much, Mike. Great projects. Now I'd like to introduce our final panelist, Nate Oliver. He's the head of marketing and technology with Vulcan Vents. Go ahead, Nate.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for having me. Really honored to be here, and just the exciting project and community that's developed around Colorado. So I'm here to talk about Vulcan Vents. These are a few stills from the How It Works video, which we'll see in just a minute here. By the way, I'm sold on all the products that we've talked about. I want a house with all the things. Pretty exciting. I've enjoyed it. Well, where vents come in, this is a good slide to pause on for a minute. With fireproof materials, stone buildings, what have you, the ones that do need vents, and all of the existing homes that do have vents, even with a good defensible space, Class A materials, we predominantly do not protect the inside of our homes from fire and their vulnerabilities. The embers will pass all of our security measures, so to speak, and get sucked into your homes. How they do that is when you have a wildfire event, because of thermodynamics, it will generally become hotter outside, meaning high pressure, and your home is insulated, hopefully, and can very often be low pressure inside of the building envelope and prone to embers getting sucked into your home. And that's where our product comes in. This is an anatomy of our product. It's a fairly simple design, but very ingenious. The back of the vent, we use a 304 stainless ember mesh. The minimum opening on that is 1/16 of an inch. We have found that using 1/8 inch mesh, as often seen in the building code throughout the country, we cannot pass the ASTM E2886 ember test using 1/8 inch mesh. It fails. Our competitors fail. Everybody fails the ember test with 1/8 inch mesh. Unfortunately, the building code is very slow to change. Using this ember mesh here, we pass it no problem. The middle layer is the kind of distinctive Vulcan vent honeycomb. It's an aluminum material, comes from the aircraft industry, and we coat it with an intumescent coating. Intumescent meaning expands to heat. That will seal up to guard the interior of your home from radiant heat and flame. The middle portion, that honeycomb, that's for radiant heat and flame. The back portion is to block embers. We use an 1/8 inch mesh on the front for pest abatement. That's a G90 galvanized screen, and they come in stainless and copper. We see the next slide. So as I've talked about, maybe I should have sped you up, but this is fine. People get it confused. People think, oh, the vents need to close up to block embers. That's a collapsing of the functions. There's two layers. The back is a physical stainless steel screen. The vent needs to do nothing for it to effectively block embers for the life of the vent. And it's that reactive barrier with the coating on it that will swell up and protect your home from heat and radiant energy and flame. Next slide. So I've just covered this here. Next slide. There we go again. If you could kind of sequence through the next few slides, this will be a little still of them expanding, of that coating expanding. So you can think of those little pellets that you would light on fire at 4th of July, those little charcoal snakes. That's kind of what happens. Pause here for a sec if you could. One thing that we're very, very proud of with our vents is that they work like a vent better than any of the other fire and ember safe vents on the market. We have about a 3% reduction from 1/8" mesh, just standalone 1/8" mesh, where you know, some of the other products are very restrictive on airflow. So we have a very, very high net-free vent area, critical to keeping your home healthy. What's the next slide? We make all different shapes and sizes. So at New Cal Metals, it's our parent company. We are a sheet metal and building materials manufacturer. So our continuous vents, they're long 10-foot strip vents. They double as a ridge vent. We make ridge vents for standing seam metal roofs that also double as rain screen fire protection at the bottom, with all different flange styles. We make framed open-faced vents for the foundation, crawl space, for soffits. We make tabbed eave vents, half-round dormers, tons of retrofit options, very easy and flexible to work with in the field. And you can also purchase just the intumescent honeycomb by itself, along with, it will come with the ember mesh, and you simply can cut those two materials to fit. A bead of fire caulking around your rough opening on the back side, and you know, some 1-inch wide washers, and basically fasten this honeycomb and ember mesh to the back side of an existing vent and retrofit it, be completely fire and ember safe. With the building codes changing all over the United States, we're gaining a lot of momentum. We are also, I believe, the only vent that has a listing of a 1-hour fire rated assembly. So if you put a Vulcan vent in a listed 1-hour assembly, our vent is, that listing will carry and be good. Only vent, I believe, with that rating. So if you have lot line issues and other restrictions, pretty proud of that. We have 2 listings. So we have the California State Fire Marshal listing with most of our products, and then ICC, International Code Council. We have a Chapter 7A listing, and that's where our 1-hour listing is. And both of those ICC listings do cover all of our products. So lots of flexibility there, lots of compliance, and we're, you know, pretty much helping to set that standard. I think I kind of went through all of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate. Thank you to all of our panelists. This has been great. So we're going to jump right into Q&A. We have a bunch of questions and we are running out of time, so I'm going to jump in real quick. So the first question is for Hardy. We noticed that there's no plants close to Colorado. How easy will it be to get a product when needed?
Great question. Great question. So I mentioned the expansion of all of our current plants. In all honesty, Colorado is a tough place because we don't make a whole lot of things here. We get a lot of things shipped in, and trucking and railing stuff is at an all-time high. And when they don't have return freight, it becomes kind of a secondary place to deliver. I will tell you that we remained at 90+% on-time delivery through 2020. And we gained some market share that pushed us past our capacity. Thus, we had to expand in the last year and a half or so to over another 1 billion feet. I will tell you the nearest the nearest exterior cladding competitor of ours can make just over half of what we can currently make. So when you talk about just an apples to apples comparison, we can make nearly double our nearest competitor in siding. So long answer is our lead times have gotten better and better. We've actually released new products and brought back products that were on pause when our capacity was reached. And yeah, it is tough at times with Colorado historically, but everything's looking much better in the recent 6 to 8 months. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. This next question is for Lisa. You mentioned a wall assembly with exterior insulation. Is there a typical assembly that involves insulation on the interior side of the masonry to show off your block?
Okay, so the question is how do we finish the inside of the wall, if that's what I understand. So like I mentioned, there's different ways you can choose to finish it. And if you wanted the blocks to be shown, then there's a sealer that would be placed on top of the wall. We can also do interior walls that would be uninsulated. They wouldn't need to have insulation in them, and they could be a thinner wall that could be structural and load bearing as well. Yeah, no, there's probably as many different ways as you can think of how to finish them. You can even put drywall over them, and even though it's not necessary.
Thank you, Lisa. Next question is for Sam Ordway. Can you speak to the grout used for AAC block? Is it different than a traditional grout used in a CMU wall?
The grout is very similar. A matter of fact, identical. Depending upon the engineer that draws it, we're looking at 3,000 to 5,000 psi, depending upon the application. If there's high seismic, we want it to have a little bit more flux and less reinforcement. We build a monolithic wall. That's why it performs so well where there's seismic activity. But the grout also in the first image had the grout cylinders that encompass the rough openings for windows and doors. And we do 3 lifts typically, one up to the sill height. The next lift will be up to the header. By lift, I mean we fill that chamber, and then we do a final lift up to the bond beam, which racks the structural horizontally all around the perimeter of the house. But it is very similar in nature to the CMU, but conceptually, the walls are very different. CMU walls are very rigid. We enjoy ductility due to the nature of AAC material and how it's manufactured. Hopefully that
Awesome.
answered the question with a few extra points.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. You got another one for you. Can you use AAC blocks in a passive house?
Yeah, we're starting to see in the eco arena, there's because we don't have a lot of plants in the United States, it was really expensive to ship it. Now that we are utilizing rail, we've innovated with airbags so we get less breakage. We are starting to see a lot of the eco builders, homes that are trying to achieve the passive nature. It does perform real well. AAC also has thermal mass qualities. And so to integrate that into a passive home, we would welcome sitting down and helping you design that. And we are involved in several of them in Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming right now.
Great. And I believe you mentioned comparing cost to a traditional wall. Would you mind repeating the cost?
Yeah, one of the things that happened in the lumber industry, which we all know, is the skyrocketing price of framing lumber and the OSB products. And we saw that we were actually cheaper with an 8-inch thick wall during the peak. And currently, most of the studies that we have done, and I mentioned that we do an exercise with all homeowners, mainly to prove a point that it is pretty much apples to apples. Now, when we lay an 8-inch block, that's finished wall. You don't have any vapor barriers. You don't need drywall. You texture the inside with lime plaster the same way you would texture your drywall. And so when we compare a full wall, it would be a 2x6 wall with our whatever's required by the county that you're in, it would have drywall on one side with, you know, the finished paint, and then also the sheeting on the outside. That's a finished wall in our view, along with a vapor or moisture barrier. And so when we compare those two types of walls, they're pretty equal this day and age, and we are finding that more so.
Thank you, Sam. Next is a question for Nate with Vulcan Vents. We can see these vents being swapped out on an existing home, or can we see these vents being swapped out on an existing home looking to retrofit? You mentioned that they limit the amount of airflow needed. Do you have to do anything else to an existing vent?
Really great question. So they do restrict, all fire number safe vents are more restrictive than standard mesh. We are minimally restrictive, so about a 3% reduction from 1/8" mesh. From 1/4" mesh, maybe a percent. So if your builder was put in just a little bit more airflow than was required, you should not have to do anything to swap them out one for one. And there's sometimes, you know, the retrofit discussion, or, you know, problem, so to speak, the task of retrofitting. The difficulty of that, or the ease of that, is really going to be dependent upon how your home was built. Thankfully, we have so many different options. You can often leave an existing vent right where it is and put our vent right over the top of it. Aesthetics come into play. If you don't want to see the flange, you can install our vents on the back side of an existing vent. So sometimes you need to remove the vent, sometimes you don't. That's really kind of into the craftiness and the you know, your level of creativity. A homeowner can do this, a contractor can do this. There's no special knowledge required to install our vent. The interesting part about our vent is the insides, not the outsides. So tons of options. We love taking calls from customers, anybody at all, and we're here to solve problems with you.
And a follow-up question for you, Nate. Would it be problematic or restrict airflow too much for a whole house vent to exhaust the attic?
So that's a question we're getting more and more. Our vents are designed for passive airflow, so nothing powered. And the reason behind that is all fire and ember safe vents, whether there's two other competitors on the market, they're designed to block embers and everything else. They're not prejudiced. So in a passive situation, you really probably won't see them clog. In an active powered situation, they would be prone to clogging over time, depending on the environment that you're in, the dust, pollen quality. Good thing about our vents, you can visually inspect them, like you might your rain gutters. You can take a look at them, see if if there's a bird's nest around it, or wasp nests, or see if they've clogged, and simply blow it out with a leaf blower or something to that effect. We really haven't gotten any calls on that over the past 14 years. We really haven't had any complaints, but with powered ventilation, we are getting more and more calls about that. So interesting thing to keep in mind, they're designed for all fire and ember safe vents are designed for passive airflow. But we have seen them used in powered situations. You just need to be a little more cognizant. Our vents do have in the document that I requested that all the attendees get. There was a third party kind of home diagnostic home builder guy. His name's Corbett, and he's got a fantastic home forensics building materials show on PBS. He got a hold of our vents and the other vents on the market and did an airflow study in a plexiglass chamber with a static pressure drop, CFM, the whole ball of wax. And from a CFM standpoint, it didn't look like we degraded the airflow by any margin, which I was really shocked at. We don't usually do CFM studies because we're passive, but he did an active test, and it's pretty insightful. So
sounds good. And we have one more for you. Does the vent need to be replaced after it has the expansion? Or is it just part of the vent? And is that on the homeowner's cost, or is that something that Vulcan will replace?
That's a great question also. We do get it a lot. So from the ember standpoint, no activations required. You won't need to replace your vents if the vent is blocking embers. And largely that's what everybody will experience, the entire community. If there's a wildfire event, everyone will be bombarded with embers, and you would not need to replace your vents then. If they do get activated, if there's radiant energy or a flame wall or a wood pile or something outside your home that has caused the vents to reach 450 to 500 degrees, they will activate. It is last ditch imminent failure, right? That's the last component that your home will have to protect itself along with the siding. If they do activate, they will need to be replaced. So will your siding, maybe, and your windows and your seals. I've always said, and you can hold me to it, if your vents activate and your home, your precious home has undergone that threat, give us a call. We'll just give you free vents. Real simple. We're behind our customers.
That's a good attitude to have. Thank you.
It is. I think so. Just come on.
All right. Looks like we're going back to Hardy. How do your shingles do after 10 years of actual weathering rather than the simulated weathering? We got some disbelief.
Well, we've been doing siding for, I would say, the early 80s, and certainly in Colorado, I have a extensive list of shingle homes that you could certainly not go knock on the door, but certainly drive by and see a lot of these homes that are 10 years, 15 years old, and see for yourself. The thing about siding, any siding, is everything fades when you talk about our pre-finished product is called Color Plus. We are kind of the preeminent siding manufacturer that created a pre-finished product over 12 to 15 years ago. You can go and see Color Plus homes that are 15 years old and see for yourself. I don't know if you guys are going to provide emails here, but you can certainly grab my email and email a certain color or product you want to see in Colorado, and I can give you some places to look at it. But everything fades is what I'm getting at. Hardy's stability of the product holds up. That's why we do the 30-year non-prorated warranty on the structure of the product. The finish warranty is it is 15 years, because truly every paint fades and you are going to have to refinish the paint. But the stability of the actual siding is what is durable, low maintenance, and I think superior to just about any other cladding, in my opinion. Obviously biased opinion, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. And to that note, to get everyone's contact, please, panelists, if you would put your contact information, if you'd like it to be out there, just throw it in the chat so people can get it right away. Oh, and Johnny just said the same thing. All right. Another question for Lisa and Sam. What is the R value inch of your block?
All right. So the R value comes from the insulation cavity that we use predominantly, which is about an R12. So R value assumes, anyway, there's a whole kind of theory on R value assumes a steady state, and thermal mass works to regulate temperatures, assuming that they are going above and below the thermal comfort level. So there's an energy code that both Sam and I have to pass in our buildings, and there are 3 different methods to get through the energy code. One is prescriptive, so that you check boxes on R values, and the other is performance, which looks at the building envelope as a whole. And that is how we get our projects through the energy code, of which the double wall system that I showed earlier was approved in Steamboat Springs in Climate Zone 7. So hopefully that answers a little bit more than you asked, but I'll let Sam finish with
I
that.
think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Way in, Sam.
You bet. And I am not joking when I say I have had this conversation with over 100 engineers and architects. There is a lot of deception. When you buy a bat and it says R something on it, that wall does not become that. There is a lot of, there's thermal bridging, there's thermal mass and everything involved. So what we do for every house for a very small cost, it's about $500 upon final design. We encourage the designers to put walls that deal with the fenestration, your window positioning and their southern exposure to build in thermal mass into these homes, and or limit it if we're shooting for a cooler environment, you know, just depending upon where it is. They establish what the R value is for that building envelope. And it's not just what's in the wall, what is in your roof, what type of appliances they take into consideration because they generate heat, the fenestration of your windows, whether you have thermal mass working in conjunction with those windows. And that's why I have stated that when we do these studies, the AAC at an 8-inch thick wall in the climate zone in the Front Range, the last one we did was actually in Larimer County, and I'm doing one right now in Jefferson County that's a little higher elevation, but they are all coming up to R22++. Now, if you take the standalone material just sitting there, you will based on some of the ways that Lisa just mentioned that they established the R values, you will come up with much less. But when you put a bat that says R19 on it in a wall, it does not mean that that wall is R19. And so there's a lot of deception in the industry. And to be perfectly honest with you, we're trying to break up some of that deception because it really is about the envelope as a whole.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sam. I know we're running a little bit over time, but we have a lot of great questions here, so we'll keep going for a little bit. Next one's going to be Montana Timber or CHEMCO. The question is, for treated wood products, what is the toxicity of the chemicals used for the fire-resistant treating?
Bill, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Our products, there's no toxicity at all. We use basically nitrogen, potassium, ammonia sulfate, and phosphorus, and we mix it with a proprietary resin-based polymer that's water-based. And if you go to Safer Wood's website at saferwood.org, you'll find our MSDS sheet, and it shows no toxicity whatsoever.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
And we got one question for Rockwool. If Rockwool was used as an outside insulation with stucco exterior, would it need to be replaced if your neighbor's house burnt down?
So we're non-flammable, non-combustible. I mean, it would depend on how extensive the fire got. Stucco-based wall, you're probably not going to worry about it much. But in the case of like the older wildfires, regardless of how well your house is built, your house is engulfed in flames, it's gonna go regardless of what's in the walls. The biggest thing is I focus on is it can give you a couple extra minutes to get out and give you a little more peace of mind for knowing it's not going to be combustible and contribute more to the fire.
Great, thank you, Thomas. And we have some general questions for everybody. People are wondering if any of the panelists or vendors would be offering discounts for Marshall Fire Rebuilders instead of everyone just chiming in at once. Maybe if you are providing discounts, just throw that in the chat really quick so people can know what the discount is and for which company. I think, before going too far, we're really so grateful for all the great questions. We know there are some we didn't have a chance to address, but if your question was not answered, email it over to admin@cgbg.org, and we will try our best to get back to you quickly. Thank you all to all the panelists for your time and for everyone who joined. We are so thankful to be in a community of individuals who are willing to volunteer their time to help their neighbors. Have a great night, everybody.